Thank you for joining us for the Inside Track on Real Estate with the Dekker team, and I am Yetta Dekker.
And I'm Ryan Dekker.
And so today we decided it would be awesome for you to get to meet a couple of our other team members, but you only get to start with one today. And so we've invited Ryan to join us. And Ryan, just tell us a little bit maybe about how you got into real estate.
All right. Well, as some of you may know, I'm Ken and Yetta's son, and I've been in real estate for, 20 years, showing houses since I was a wee one. And so anyways, I've been around it a long time, and I always said, I'll never do this, just because of the lifestyle, or I don't know what it was. And then when I got into the real world, I realized that helping people with real estate is a lot of fun, and it's great to help someone on a daily basis. I get to be around people all the time. So it really changed from not wanting to this being a dream for me.
Right. And so Ryan, we watched you grow up, and so it's a little bit interesting interviewing your own son. And you started the real estate courses more than once, actually.
Yeah, I did.
And so what was that all about?
So I was in school, and it was really broad. And it was business at the time. And I wasn't learning enough, so I wanted to get into real estate. And then I hit the financial aspect of my courses, and I decided I really did want to finish my school, and then I really did want to move forward with this because it's a really big passion of mine. And then once I was done my finances, I got back into the real estate courses and finished them up.
Right. So you started them twice, not because you lost interest, but because you decided you were going to stay with your education.
Yes.
Finish your business major,
finance, yeah.
Business finance major, and then once that was completed, you in fact didn't even tell us when you registered the second time.
That's very true. When you start it once and you look kind of silly for stopping, you just do it yourself and then tell everyone you've completed it after. Yeah.
All right. And so you've been at it a couple of years now.
Yep.
And we've enjoyed having you with us.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and you've enjoyed it, I think, most days?
Most days. It's pretty awesome.
Okay. And so there's been a lot of learning and education. So beyond the typical courses, which we've talked about with everybody on previous shows, and that the standard of what it takes to get into real estate, what else have you done to make yourself really available and knowledgeable on behalf of your client that you're representing?
Well, it's very important in real estate to be on top of your game, and not just in what's going on in the market, but how to talk to people, how to deal with them, how to make them really feel cared for, and to get them to listen to you because you really do know what's best for them in a lot of cases when it comes to real estate. And so you need to be able to educate them on that.
Okay.
So some of the things I've done is when I'm showing properties or I'm driving to my next appointment, I'm actually listening to audio tapes and different kind of things to get me ready to help them in a deeper level. And then on top of that, there's continuing education, just normal courses with real estate. And I read a fair number of books on finances and real estate investing. So when I get in conversation with people, I can really be there to help them.
Okay. So you said, Ryan, that some of your expertise really came from the finance industry as well, because you have a passion around numbers and wealth and helping not only yourself, but helping everyone else build wealth that you're in relationship with. So how do you actually utilize that in your role as their realtor?
Okay. So it'll change depending on what kind of client I'm dealing with, because we have tons of clients we deal with. The first-time home buyer, the first-time investor who's looking at getting their second property, the big-time investor who's looking at getting their 20th property. So it really depends on who they are, on how it's helpful. With the first-time home buyer, to understand that this will be the best financial decision you make, most likely, in the history of your life is pretty cool. And so be able to crunch the numbers with my clients, such as yourselves, and really look at, in 5 years I'll have this much money, and then after this much, and at 5 years I can then re-leverage and buy a second home for no more money down. To be able to educate people on that really gives them a good foothold heading forward.
Okay, awesome.
And then again, with the first-time investor, it's helpful to know that information, that I've done it also myself. When I was 20, I bought my first home. Best decision I ever made. There's been some ups and downs, but financially, cannot complain. And so when I get to educate these people on what it looks like and some of the problems they'll run into and what kind of tenants to look for, just all the different aspects, it's great. What kind of cap rate you want, which if you're not an investor, I'll explain that. It's just how much money you're going to earn for how much you're putting in, is basic cap rate.
That's very simple.
Yes, it
and I
is.
think probably from having been in the finance industry and understanding and working in that, you actually took a season between your real estate and your education and actually worked in a wealth building industry.
I did, and most of it, to be honest, was wealth building in real estate. So it wasn't necessarily being a real estate agent helping people find homes, but it was still helping them find a product that got them ahead.
Right, so you kind of stayed right in that niche market for yourself, which
Yes.
really, even though you're not old, and I'm sure anybody watching us, if you've been on the radio, you may not be able to hear Ryan's youth. However, if you're watching us, you would certainly be able to tell that he's not an ancient young man. And so it's probably helpful to know that he still has some life experience, that not only has he been around real estate since he was basically an infant. I started my courses just as he was being born, and so it's all he's ever known from a chatter around the house and conversation that existed that way. And he certainly did, for quite a few years, do a lot of real estate activity with his father when he was a young child. And Ken was my assistant originally, which I'm sure some of you don't know, so that's a little inside secret. Ryan did a lot of the running with him in those days. So in relation to helping your client, you've said you know a lot about finance and you understand building wealth in real estate because yourself, you've already done it. Mm-hmm. You haven't arrived, but you've certainly done some of it already.
I'm on a good track for it.
You're in a right direction. And you don't believe in a lot of debt outside of real estate or investing?
Let me correct you on that. I believe in no debt outside of investing. And some people may have an issue with that because they think debt is necessary for life. I want to tell you, no, it's not. And if you want to call me and talk to me about it, I will certainly guide you through that journey.
All right. And so you also assist in facilitating buyer workshops and investor workshops. Can you tell us a little bit about what those are and what's involved there?
So those are great times where we can meet with multiple people at once. It's a very low pressure environment. And so we'll meet with, 20 people or sometimes even 5. And we'll sit down and we'll talk about investing, any questions they have. Same with buying. We'll kind of give them the broad strokes. And they're getting a lot of that through the radio show. But I guess it's more an intense hour and a half. And the nice thing about them is you can ask any question you want and we'll get it answered for you.
All right, fantastic. So you do that, the real estate investor, and how to find those rules and principles that savvy investors employ. Those would be the second Thursday of every month.
That's
and
correct.
That's hosted at 1 Antares.
1 Antares Drive, Suite 110.
Right, but you've got to RSVP anyway, so when you RSVP, we would give you the address and the suite number. And then the third Thursday of every month, we do a buyer workshop, which is just really the pitfalls. I think we cover 8 pitfalls that a buyer needs to avoid or would prefer avoiding, I think, when buying a home. And so even if you've bought multiple properties, there's still tips and guidelines and things to avoid that could be valuable at the buyer workshop, which again is the third Thursday of the month. And Ryan's involved in presenting those and teaching people, what there is to be taught around investing and buying in real estate.
That's correct.
Yeah. So Ryan, tell me a little bit about how you proactively look for homes for buyers.
All right, so there's a lot of different ways to look for homes for buyers. One of the ways I use fairly often is I will go out in the community where I know they want to buy a home, and I'll look for people who are just about ready to sell. And we'll just make it that much quicker to get a buyer into that home.
For your specific buyer?
For my specific buyer,
okay.
That's correct.
And you do that every time, or you do that when there's nothing wonderful on the market already? Because I'm assuming you also look at the properties that are already here.
Yes, that's correct. I look at what's on the market, I look at what's in our company that's not on the market yet, but is still good for my client. And then, so I don't do that every time. That is a case to case. If they really can't find what they need, but I know what's out in that community, I will go and get that house in that community.
That's awesome, and I bet your clients really appreciate that.
I think they do.
Right. And then the other neat thing is sometimes we meet amazing sellers that we wouldn't otherwise have met because Ryan's out there looking for homes specifically to suit that particular buyer.
And I'll do the same for sellers, is I'll go out and I'll look for buyers for that seller.
Perfect. And so, Ryan, what about open houses? What role does that play? in helping a buyer?
So open houses are great for me to meet new people and get out there and answer any questions someone might have, because they often come to the open house to learn about the home, but also to learn a little more about real estate or answer any questions they have. So that's a wonderful part of working open houses, is you get to meet a lot of people and you get to communicate with them. And when I'm out, because I do a lot of open houses, I see a lot of homes with my buyers each week. I know what's out there, I know the inventory, so I'm able to share that with the people and find them and know the home that's good for them.
Rather than just not knowing your inventory. And when you talk about inventory, I'm assuming what you're talking about is the homes that are currently on the market.
That's correct.
Right?
Yes.
And so rather than just looking on the MLS,
which is a good piece.
Right, it's a tool.
Yeah.
And yet what you're doing is you're looking at homes pretty much every day of the week, and that allows you to know what's out there and what's really good and what's not good and what has maybe issues or that kind of thing. Is that right, Ryan?
That's correct.
Okay. And how does that benefit your buyer?
Well, I think in a lot of ways. The one way that I know it benefits them for sure is they can be confident, because they might only get to see 3 or 5 homes with me before they make a buying decision, but they're confident that I know this is a great home for them. And that's just being in the market so much. They don't need to look at 30 homes and decide, because that actually is not beneficial to them, because they get confused with the details. And it's hard to make a good decision when you've seen that many homes. We see it time and time again. And so it allows me to save my clients time, money, and stress. And they almost always, if not always, get the best home for them.
Because you not only have listened to them, I'm assuming.
That's correct.
But you've also seen the properties that are out there. And if somebody were to say to you, well, I really want to see that house, you would be able to say, well, based on what you've told me,
this one may or may not work for you.
Well, this isn't going to likely work for you. And yet, if they really still wanted to see it after you explained why you believed it didn't work, I'm assuming you'd show it to them.
I would still take it to them, yes.
Take them to it.
Take them to it.
Yeah,
Yes.
all right,
Yes.
Fantastic. And so if you're just joining us now, it's Yetta Dekker and Ryan Dekker on the Inside Track and on real estate in the Ottawa area. And we're talking specifically today with Ryan Dekker, who is our son, as he presented earlier in the show, and who's been in real estate for several years now, and as he says, for over 20 years, which is not far from the truth. It actually is truth, because he's been around it since before he was born, which makes it, I guess, almost 2.5 decades. And so thank you for joining us for the Inside Track. And so, Ryan, tell me a little bit more about just connecting with the people that we already know, that we've already worked with in the past, or maybe people that haven't worked with us and yet introduce us to people when they know somebody wants to move.
Yeah. So on a daily basis, I get to call people who we've worked with and just reconnect with them and see how they're doing, if there's anything we can help them with, and actually invite them to our events that we have. So we have 4 events a year.
Celebrations, I call them. They're not events anymore. They're called celebrations.
We have the strawberry social, where you come and pick strawberries with us, the apple picking, where you come and pick apples with us, which is awesome. And then we give actually a Christmas tree to every family that we bring out to our client appreciation celebration. Thank you. And then the other one is the Learn, Laugh, Love event, which is kind of a charity and just a really fun time to hang out kind of around Valentine's Day and meet our clients. So I'm calling people, connecting them, getting them to that, and just really being with them. And even though we might not be selling them a house right now, we still get to be a part of their life.
And they get to be a part of ours,
and they get to be
fun.
A part of our life too, which
Yeah.
is pretty awesome.
Yeah. Awesome. And Ryan, what about consulting your buyers? We haven't really talked a lot about that. We've said you understand your buyers and what they're looking for, but how do you make that possible?
So how do I
understand what it is somebody's looking for?
Well, we have a very good system on when to meet with them and what to ask them to make sure we really are understanding them and we're not, just going, oh, I think I know. Because it is important to have a system in place, because this is really important to know what my buyers really want, really need. And sometimes they know what they want, and yet they haven't been able to say it. So I'm often not just listening to what they say, but I'm listening to their heart of the matter. I don't know if I can give you an example right now. Sometimes people will want acreage, and they'll say that. And really, it's not the acreage that's important. It's feeling that you're not surrounded by other neighbors or something like that. So without the acreage, we can still find them a home that really works for them. And sometimes when they say acreage, they really do need acreage. They need to go hunting, they need to, farm or whatever it is. So you have to be listening and ask the questions to dig deeper.
Right, and so it's not just about the surface stuff.
That's correct.
It's about hearing what's really going on for them.
Yeah.
Okay, and so how do you do that? Like, when do you do that? Do you just do it on the telephone, or do you sit down with people? What do you do, Ryan?
Yeah, so I would sit down with them for a consultation, and we'd talk about their needs. And I mean, we do a pre-consultation on the phone, but really the meat and gravy is when we sit down and meet. And that's my favorite time is, the first time we get to see each other. And then after, we go see homes. Not the same day, but we go see
sometimes
some.
It could be.
Most times it's the next day or 2 days later. And we go see these homes, and I get to talk to them about each home. And so it's not so much one specific time, it's a continual interaction of getting to know, this home was great, except this. Okay, I know the other 3 will work because of the conversation we had today. And so we're constantly adjusting what they're looking for because it's a continual process.
Right. So the initial conversation that you have, you said there's a little bit of a phone conversation.
Yeah.
And that's maybe 10, 15 minutes just to get acquainted on the telephone?
Yeah. Sometimes it's shorter, sometimes it's longer, depending on what people need.
Right. And then you sit down with them, and that is either side of an hour probably?
Yeah, 40 minutes to an hour and a half.
Okay.
Sometimes longer. Again, it's so specific on you, the buyer. I mean, if you really need to talk with me and understand real estate, then we'll take the time. And we'll get to know everything in the market. We'll really talk. And then there's some people that have bought a bunch of homes, and they don't need that. They just want to say, hi, how you doing, sign the paperwork, and get going, which is wonderful too.
Right. So either one really works.
Yeah.
And when somebody wants, you do have the ability to give them the entire process.
Yes.
And exactly the details and the nuances.
Exactly.
Right. And so we do have actually a 2012 buying guide that we put together specifically for our clients. And if you'd like one of those, certainly connect with us, and then we can arrange for that to be in your possession. And you would do that by connecting with us at 613-860-4663, or info@dekkerteam.com gets us initially connected if you prefer the email system, or even checking out our website and seeing what's going on in our world that way and how we could get connected. So the buying guide can be really valuable. And in fact, when we sit down and have a consultation, there is a significant buying guide that we have used for years that we would also provide to you that helps you really just know you're not missing any details.
That's correct.
Right?
And just to repeat for you guys, because you had to said it really fast, our number is 613-860-4663.
And it spells home, the 4663.
Yeah.
So that also makes it a little bit easier since we are in the business of buying and selling homes on behalf of our clients. So it's 860-HOME, H-O-M-E. So Ryan, a little bit more on maybe the whole aspect of negotiating.
Okay. So are you talking about when we find the right home and we're ready to put in an offer and get the home for them?
Yeah.
Okay. So what aspect of that? What are you looking for?
How are you ensuring that your buyer, because let's talk about buyers for a moment. I think on a lot of the previous shows, we've talked a lot about sellers and how we protect their interest and how we continue to negotiate in their favor as long as we humanly can and create a win-win.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming with working with buyers, you want to do the same thing. So what specific things might you be doing on behalf of your buyer to ensure that they're getting good value?
Okay. So first thing I do is, because I'm a number cruncher, as we already talked about, I'm a finance major, I come back to my computer and I really crunch the numbers. And this is an important step for me. Although I see homes every day, each home's very specific to their neighborhood. So I crunch the numbers, I make sure the home works, and then I talk with them. This home is $5,000 undervalued or $5,000 above.
Or it appears to be based on the previous sales and what's currently available and all that sort of stuff.
Exactly. And so, when I say crunch the numbers, I mean inventory, which is on the market, because that, competition, what's sold, because that's really, people are willing to pay for this. So if you go to sell it, you should assume it's similar to this. So those numbers are very important.
And what about things that have been on the market that didn't sell?
Yeah.
You think about that as well?
Yeah,
and you would
that's part of it.
right? And you would show your buyers all that information?
I would. And I wouldn't overload them. I'm not going to show them every single house that's sold ever because that's way too much. But I'll break it down and I'll make it very manageable so they can see and they can make a great decision.
Right, because it really is about giving them their options.
It is.
And presenting good information, because when you have great information, you make a
great decision.
Exactly. Yeah. So in relation, beyond doing the analysis, which is really what we're talking about, you call it crunch numbers, I call it an evaluation.
Yeah.
And so beyond doing that, what else are you doing to ensure they're getting good value?
Okay, so we're also going to look at the home and make sure everything's up to date. And I'm not a building inspector. I never say I will. I am. And yet, when I go through the home, I can see what things are wrecked, what things are good, on the surface at least. And that gives my clients a good understanding of, am I going to have to come up with $5,000 to fix structure, 20 grand or whatever right away before we even put an offer in on the home.
So when you're negotiating, you're ensuring as much as your ability allows, which is pretty extensive. You've been around new construction, you've been around renovations, you've been around building, you've done some yourself. We've done lots. We've been new home warranty builders. So you've really seen construction from the inside out.
Yeah.
And so therefore you're looking for any major deficiencies, you're looking even for minor deficiencies.
That's correct.
So that when the building inspector does come after you've negotiated the agreement, he's really there to confirm what you've already found.
And if there's anything extreme that I didn't see maybe in the attic or the electrical's really wonky, there are things I don't look for because we don't have time when we're seeing all these homes. And so if something like a septic fails or something like that, then we renegotiate that afterward. But I want the majority of the negotiating right up front because it's easier to negotiate after an inspection if it's just the big issues. If you got to throw everything in, you just get everyone upset.
Right, so it doesn't go very well, does it?
It doesn't go well. So we make sure everyone knows what's going on right up front, and it helps us get the best home for the best price.
Okay, and best terms, I'm assuming?
Best terms, best conditions.
And what does best term mean?
So best terms would be, closing date's important for a lot of people. If they're renting and they're buying their first home, then they want it to line up maybe a week before, a week after, so they don't have to pay extra rent. If you're selling a home, and you have to sell and buy, we got to time that out. And if you're just buying or just selling, it's a lot easier time-wise. And some of the other conditions can be inclusion, so fixtures and chattels. And for you guys who don't know, fixtures are anything affixed to the property, i.e. lights or mirrors or air conditioner that's central air, things like that. And chattels are anything that's not attached, so a fridge, a stove.
Well, they're kind of attached.
They're attached by a plug, and that's it. They're not screwed to the property. If I come and reef on it, it's going to move, and it's not part of the property.
Okay.
And so we can put that in as well. And sometimes, this doesn't happen very often, but we can negotiate for a cat or a dog.
Or a lawnmower.
Or a lawnmower, yeah, a little more regular. Or a bass boat, or, whatever. We can do that. And sometimes that's important to our buyers or our sellers who need to get rid of certain things, or furniture. So
I sold a pool table last night.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And so all that, and I know some deals have come together because of a couch. So, this stuff does happen. That being said, the main stuff we're looking for are also, we want to protect our buyers and our sellers. So we want to make sure that building inspection, financing, and insurance are in there. And if it's country property, we need septic and water potability.
And maybe well driller certificate, maybe the whole well, make sure things are within the property boundary lines.
Sometimes a wet certificate, and depending on the house.
And wet certificate, you just throw that out there like everybody should know what a wet is. I think it's damp basement.
Yes.
And I'm sure that's not what a wet certificate
not what it
is.
It's for a fire-burning fireplace.
A wood-burning?
Wood-burning, thank you. Yes,
okay.
They all burn fire. Right.
Thank you.
So just to make sure it's all working. And
meeting current regulations and standards,
current
right?
regulations and standards, yes.
And then there could be things like a TSSA, which is in relation to oil. And we have done previous shows on the details of all the different inspections.
Yep.
So for the finite details of these, go to one of our archive shows, which you can find at chri.ca, or you can find them at dekkerteam.com. And you can find them in video and audio format at dekkerteam.com and in audio at chri.ca. .ca. And so there has been shows on the TSSAs and the wet certificates and those kinds of things, as well as the ESA and so many others. Anyway, so we won't bore you with the details of those today, but it's great to know that they're being covered and the client's being protected around that in relation to purchasing a property.
Yeah, and I know sometimes, especially when we're on the radio, we'll just throw out abbreviations. Yeah, it's pretty good to catch me on that. When we're in person, we don't do that because we can see your facial expressions and you'll tell us, I don't know what that is. And then we can dig in. And so, yeah, you'll get a lot more detail if you need it and a lot less if you don't when we're face to face.
Okay. So, Ryan, we've just got a couple of minutes left.
Yep.
So what is important? What would you want every client to know that you might be helping? What's the one thing you would want them to know?
About
how you care for them.
Well, one thing we never mentioned, which we need to, is a buyer's rep is free to the buyer.
Right.
And we do need to state that because it's important. You don't have to fork out all this money. The seller does pay me if I'm the buyer's agent. I don't know if you covered that in a previous.
Yeah, but
okay.
Cover it again.
Cover it again. Great. And so as a buyer, my service would be free to you, which is great because it's hard to come up with just a down payment in the first place.
And closing costs.
And so, question again?
So what's the one thing you would want everybody to know?
Yeah.
And I think you just got half of it there, so what's another half?
So the other half is I really want them to know that I'm there for their best interest. Okay. That I'm there to help them. I'm there to make sure they're safe and make this a wonderful, caring process where they feel cared for and they feel safe. And, my goal would be to earn them a lot of money in the long run, to have them buy a ton of investment properties and, it all work out great.
And if somebody isn't, I know you love investing and you've been
Yes.
doing it since you were basically a kid, even when you were really, really little, and we would play games around that, cash flow and different games that we had. You pretty much always won. You'd be teaching the adults how to play the game and do well. So it's obviously a natural bent for you. And so if they just really just want to own that one house,
Yes.
how would you help them there?
So again, I would make sure they're safe. I'd make sure that everything with the house is good, so they're not having to come up with a ton of money because, they didn't know the structure was sinking or something crazy like that. And I want them to get a good deal, so when they go to sell it, they can make their money back and then some.
Right. So you want them to have a win-win negotiation.
That's correct.
And that you want them to not have any surprises.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that
great
they're
sum up.
covered and protected. And so we're so happy that you've been able to join us on the Inside Track today on real estate with the Dekker team, and specifically Ottawa and area real estate. However, if you do know somebody that is thinking of buying or selling in a different neighborhood or a different city or even a different country, know that we have spent years developing amazing relationships with other realtors, and we could certainly introduce them to you. And so thanks for joining us today on the Inside Track. And if you have questions or show topics you'd like to give us, please send them to deckerteam@chri.ca, or you can always connect with us on the telephone at 693-860-4663. And thank you for joining Ryan Dekker
Thank you.
and Yetta Dekker on the Inside Track on real estate today in Ottawa. And we hope to see you back again soon. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.